While that's being done, I'm going to read in the book of 2 Timothy, the second chapter, in verse 19 through 22. 2 Timothy 2, verse 19 through 22. The Apostle Paul says to this young evangelist, "Nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his. Let everyone that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity. But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and of silver, but also of wood and earth, and some honor and some to dishonor. If a man therefore purge himself of these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use, prepared unto every good work. Flee also youthful lust, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace, with them that call on the Lord out of a pure heart." You know, you look at that text and you realize that there is a foundation. Every one of us has the opportunity, the ability, the obligation to stand firm, but it also warns of youthful lust. And you know, as we look at the lesson this morning, I hope that we realize the danger that stands before each and every one of us. The devil is going about as a roaring lion, seeking to gain control of us, but he's also given us the power to overcome. And one of those things is knowing of what the devil can do to us, being prepared for those things. You think about that, and the title is Controlling Love. And you think, what's that got to do with this youthful lust and all of that? But we need to realize that improper love is really one of the strongest tools the devil has. We have love. It's notable in this text. He says, flee youthful lust, but follow charity. And that word charity in other translations is translated as love. It's from the Greek word agape, and it is that primary word that Jesus set forth that we ourselves are to have. By this shall all men know that you're my disciples, if you have love one to another. Or in other words, that love, that agape love, that love that seeks the best for another, is to be central to our relationship one to another. That which the world sees in us, that light, as we spoke of in the Bible class, that shines forth to others. But we find that the world is filled with what so many people call love that actually is youthful lust. Lust is just that seeking after, the longing for things, and in the negative sense like that, it's forbidden things. It's not wrong to seek after diligently those things that are good and right and proper, but the world is filled with those things that aren't that way. And he says, flee from those, but rather have that proper love. So we need to control what people call love, and sometimes we're deceived. Sometimes we think this is love, but we need to examine it, and we need to be in control of our lives. We look, and the world is filled with all sorts of things right now, and has always been, that nothing's my fault. But God says that we're going to be individually judged for the decisions that we make. In Romans, the second chapter, God's not a respecter of persons. I'm going to give an answer for what I have done. I can be influenced by the things round about. I can be lured by the lust of the flesh. James says that every man is tempted, but whenever we give in to that, that's when sin conceives. I make a choice whether to give in. And so I need to be in control. I need to have a proper love, and I need to realize that there are many things that even if it begins with a proper love can be pulled aside by the things, the desires and such that are put there, instigated by the devil coming into this world and bringing sin. But I need to be in control. And I need to understand how to do that. The first thing, of course, is to realize that what some people call love isn't love at all. You know, it's like there's an old country song, and I just know bits and pieces of different songs and such, but if loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. Well, whatever he is talking about wasn't love, because love isn't wrong. Love is that which is right and good and proper. It emanates from God. God himself is love. And so we need to be in control of what it is that we have before us in life. Now, I've got down several things in the notes before you that can help us to understand how to be in control. The first thing is to have concern. In other words, I go through life, I have a purpose, I have a goal. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, Matthew 6 and verse 33. And so I have concern about my life, whether it's fulfilling the proper goal, the proper desires, the proper aim in my life. For example, am I concerned about being right in the eyes of God? Does this action, this opportunity, this desire that's before me, what does it have to do with me being right with God? In the book of 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, in verse 9 and 10, the apostle says, we labor that whether present or absent, we may be accepted of him. I mean, that's what I'm working for. Matthew 16 and verse 24, if we gain the whole world and yet lose our own soul, what have we done? We have nothing. And so I look and I say, well, is this going to help me to be accepted before God? Because we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that everyone will receive the things done in his body according to what I have done, whether it be good or bad. So I look and I choose. Joshua told the people long ago, choose ye this day whom you will serve. And there are a multitude of things before us, but really only two choices. Is it right with God or is it wrong with God? And so I look and I see this thing before me, this temptation, this desire. Is it good? You know, Paul said, prove all things, hold fast that which is good. Abstain from the very appearance of evil. And so I make proper judgments. I have a concern as to my relationship with God. I don't want to fall from God. A lot of people are to say, well, you know, that song, if loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. Is the idea that it really doesn't matter, that I'm okay. Paul said in 1 Corinthians 10 and verse 12, writing of the things that had been done before, that people did fall. And he said, let him that thinketh he standeth, take heed lest he fall. In other words, it won't happen to me. Sometimes it's a temptation, especially the physical aspect, that, well, we're only going to go this far or whatever. Well, actually, this far is wrong. But their mindset is, we're not going to get into trouble. Well, yeah, you're in trouble whenever you have that mindset. We can do this. We can be in a situation. If I don't have concern for that there is a danger of falling, I'm going to put myself in situations. Now, he says, flee youthful lust. But I got news for you. It isn't just young folk. You get into situations where you shouldn't be. You go back and you talk about the physical realm. You know, I talk about dating to young people at various times. Well, where are you going? Well, we're just going to go spend time at our house. Who's going to be there? Well, we're going to be alone, but we're okay. We're Christians. So you're putting yourself in that situation that you know temptations arise, and you think you're going to be okay? Or I'm going to go out on a date to this place, and I know they're doing it, but we're not going to be involved in that. Where is the concern, the first concern? Am I going to be able to stay right with God? Am I in danger, increased danger of falling from that relationship with God? Do I realize that in this relationship, you know, whenever God, in Genesis, the 2nd chapter, in their speaking of the recounting of the creation in chapter 2, showing the preeminence of man, but it also initiates to us the union of man and wife, man and woman. He says, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and the twain shall be one flesh. In other words, man, woman, that one flesh. And we know what that means. That's a physical interaction. And God says, that's the realm. In Hebrews, the 13th chapter, in verse 4, he says, the marriage bed is undefiled. So if I put myself in a situation in which I am going to be tempted to engage in that relationship that is only right in marriage, and I'm not married, what am I doing? I don't have a concern for God. I'm concerned with, I've got this ability. Or, we'll only go this far. Or, even if you do, you get that misguided thing of love again. Well, we love each other, so it's right. No. You lust each other, but you don't love each other because you're not seeking the best. You're not seeking God. Don't pervert the word love in that. That's not what it is. But you have a proper concern, and you have a concern for who I am. I look, and you find people get in positions, and for example, a young man, young lady, they can tell well, if you love me, you'll do this. If you're good and godly, first thing, you're going to look at that person. If you love me, you wouldn't dare to even say that. Do you know who I am? I'm a child of God. I've been bought with a price, 1 Corinthians 6 and verse 19. I am created in the image of God, Genesis 2nd chapter. I'm not like a dog out here that goes about seeking whatever you want. You look, you see animals, and they have physical relations. They have intercourse. You don't think about it. They're out in the field doing this, or out on the road doing this. Well, they're animals. Sometimes we forget we're not animals. We are created in the image of God. Whenever I become a child of God, that is amplified because I am bought with a price. The precious blood of Jesus Christ has bought me from sin. Do you know who I am? I am a child of God. Galatians, the 3rd chapter, verse 26 and 27. I am one who has been purified by the blood of Christ. Why would I want to go back into that? Regain that separation from God instead of maintaining the union with God. But so many times people, they lose their concerns because they don't control what the world calls love, and we don't control what is actually lust. You find that we allow ourselves to be tempted beyond that which we have necessity to. Every man is tempted. James 1 talks about that. But we choose whether to let it conceive. And if I'm not going to let it conceive, I have a concern for being right in the eyes of God. I have a concern that I could fall. I have a concern that God says there are certain things done in a certain realm. The things that we are tempted to do sometimes are only right within the marriage bond. They are not right anywhere else. And you go to Galatians 5, you see the works of the flesh, and the things leading up to them are in fact wrong. And so I make a decision. I am God's. And I'm going to live like it. And if this person I'm with doesn't understand that, I'm not going to be with them anymore. They don't love me. They lust me, but they don't love me. They're not seeking my best because they don't mind if they have me separate from God in order to fulfill the lust of the flesh. But then I need to have a commitment. A commitment to God. I mean, this is hard. We're not to love the world, neither the things that are in the world. John tells us, 1 John 2, for the things of the world, lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life, these things aren't of the Father. But I tell you what, they're strong, aren't they? And you've got to have a commitment. We sing that song, I have decided to follow Jesus. Well, let me tell you, again, whatever age, but young folk, you're going to be dating, you're going to be going out. You make the commitment that you have these proper concerns, and that commitment is finalized, it is intensified, it is placed in my life before I go out. I'm not going to go, I'm going to know where somebody is going. And if it is someplace that's going to increase the temptation, not going with them. Not going to engage in those things. But no matter where we are, those temptations can arise. And whenever they do, you're fighting against the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. The tools that the devil has. You want to know of an example of that commitment? You go back to the book of Genesis in the 39th chapter. There's a young man, Joseph, working in Potiphar's house. And there, the wife, he's alone with her. That was his work situation. I'd say avoid that. I tell people, you know, I talk to various young preachers and such, and I talk to young folks. I've told my son-in-law, don't be alone with women. You have somebody with you. I've had people ask me through the years, you know, well, I need to talk to you. If it's a woman, I say, that's great. My wife's going to be at home such. They said, we don't want to talk to her. I said, well, you don't need to talk to her, but I'm not going to meet with you alone. She'll be in another room, but we're not going to be alone. And I've had people get mad at me. I say, do what you might. But I can give you a list of preachers, you know, the holy ones, that have been alone with women and they've engaged in fornication, adultery. What? Well, they thought it wouldn't happen to them. They lost their concern, and they didn't have a commitment that, yeah, people want certain things, but I'm not going to do it. Joseph, he was tempted by this woman, this older woman. Now looks at him and says, come, lay with me. You think Joseph was absent any lust of the flesh? No, he was a young man. He was tempted, no doubt. But he overcame that temptation because he had a commitment. How can I do this thing? He was concerned with the household, which he was part of. I mean, my master has trusted me with all these things. But central to it was a heart. He said, how can I do this thing and sin against God? And we keep that in the forefront of our minds. So whenever you go out, you're on a date, you're in this situation, as an older person, you find yourself somewhere that you didn't intend to be, the temptation is there, you have a commitment, I cannot do this and sin against God. I'm not going to do this to you. I'm not going to do this to the people that trust me. I'm committed to do right. And he fled. She grabbed his coat. You can just see the picture. He's running out of that coat. He goes. I don't care about that coat. I'm out of here. And he faced consequences. I mean, she goes and she tells her husband, oh, he tried to lay with me. Well, she lied. You think, he thought, well, if I go to her and talk to her privately and say, well, I'll do whatever you want. You know, maybe she'll just say I was mistaken. He went to jail. I don't care what it cost. You go again, Matthew the 16th chapter. What shall it profit a man if he should gain the whole world and yet lose his own soul? Well, I can get out of this accusation if I can do this, if I get along with them, I'm going to do. No. I have a commitment that I'm going to honor God. I'm going to live honorably. And that commitment, that concern, like I said, it needs to be made beforehand. You know, in the book of Job, Job never understood what was happening to him. And his friends came against him, and one of the charges made was, you must have had illicit relationships with a young woman. In chapter 31 and verse 1, Job's response was, I made a covenant with my eyes. Why then would I look upon them? In other words, I'm not even going to look in that way. I decided. You know, the picture I see, you know, in this world, how many things are out there that tempt you? Whether you may, and by the way, sometimes people say, well, that's young men that are tempted. Yeah, that's why they have all these advertisements with men with their shirts off, showing their muscles and all their, you know, it doesn't matter, male or female. But you look and you make a decision. I look over there, oh, I'll be walking along at times with my wife. My wife said, don't look over there. Because I don't care where it gets. I mean, you go into a store. I remember growing up, I at times had the chore. My mother would say, Jackie, can you run the store? Okay. What do I need to get? I need to buy some pantyhose. Okay. Of course, that's my favorite thing to do. Well, what kind do you need? Well, there's a certain color. But there were some that were, dark. She was a nurse. She wore white pantyhose, white dress, white cap, white shoes. But the pantyhose, you couldn't see through them. I never thought that my mother would say, "Oh, you can't see through them. I'll just wear my pantyhose to work." You don't do that. You looked around today? I don't know what they call them. Leggings. But I mean, I look, Atlanta says, don't look. But you got women running around wearing pantyhose. Give them a different name. It's just no see-through pantyhose, but blinders. Young men need to have blinders. You need to look and realize there's a commitment. I'm not going to look. You look and sometimes women are wearing their pantyhose, calling them something else. Sometimes, one of the things that baffle me, and bike riders, hey, ride a bike, I don't care. Except Bill Puckett, don't ride a bike, Bill. But I see men riding a bike, and I tell Lana, don't look. They got on skin-tight underwear. They call it biking pants. It's underwear. And it ain't hiding nothing, man. Why are you doing that? You have a commitment. Don't look. You ought to have a commitment, a concern for the souls of others. Matthew the 18th chapter, not only is it if I fall, but if I cause somebody else to fall. If I'm running around in my underwear or my pantyhose, what am I doing? You say, oh man, how's he talking like that? How are you dressing like that? But people do. But I have a commitment if I'm a child of God like Job. I made a covenant with mine eyes. I look over and I say, oh no. Have a wife who says, don't look. A husband who says, don't look. A father who tells his daughter, you need to realize, oh, he loves me. He doesn't think about it. Dads, be honest with your daughters. Young men are controlled by hormones. And whenever you go out on a date and you're dressed like that, it's going to affect them. But this young man has a commitment. It may be, you go to pick up a young lady, or this young lady's going to go out with this young man, and you look at it, we ain't going nowhere. We're better people than this. Why? Because I'm a better person than that. I'm a child of God. I don't want to appear like that, and I don't want you to tempt me like that. I don't want to tempt you. And so I have this commitment that I am going to live honorably. I have this commitment that I'm going to choose God over whatever there is around me. And if it means that I run from that situation, run from that person, and people are going to laugh at me, you're not going to be thrown in jail like Joseph was. But we're not going to do it because, oh, they'll laugh at me if I say you shouldn't wear that. Or I don't wear that. Or I don't go there. It's a commitment that is there. And then I need to have common sense. I mean, just think about it. We have this idea, and I mentioned it earlier, we didn't go all the way. Okay? What did you do? Job, again, you go to him. They accused him of being in an illicit relationship, having sexual intercourse with a woman. He says, I made a covenant with mine eyes. Why should I look upon her? You see, he realized the beginning of it. I'm not going to go out girl watching or boy watching if I'm a woman. You know, there are times that I'm just cover my eyes. Because I realize that lust is what leads to sin. Where does the lust come from? From the exposure to that which is enticing. So I make that decision. I'm not going to look. I'm not going to continue that. I'm not going to sit there and say, woo, 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 and just. I'm not going to take the steps. You go over to the book of Galatians and you find in chapter 5 and verse 19, there's this word, and I encourage you, we don't have the time now, we'll do it at a later time sometime, but lasciviousness, unchaste handling, indecent body movements. You know, I'm one of those old fuddy-duddies. People say, you know, you probably don't believe in dancing, do you? Yeah, I do. Don't have a problem in the world dancing with my wife. My children, they just, oh! You know, I hug her, I hold her close, I kiss her, I will move and I will sway. But if I do that out of the marriage, you know, would you have a problem if I, with your wife, made the moves that are made in dancing so many times? I'm not my. Well, what about you? What about you young folk that aren't married? You realize that's improper, but okay. You say, I'm an old fuddy-duddy. Oh, unchaste handling. Indecent body movements. I mean, it's easy to see what God is saying. It isn't just the end. You know, whenever I was younger, you know, there was a scoring system that you'd hear people talk about. You get to first base, second base, third base, home. The Christian realizes first base is sin. There are things reserved to the marriage bond. And so I'm going to have common sense that I'm not going to do that. You know, this morning I talked about social influencers and how the reason I even heard the term was headline, social influencer dies. What happened? They fell over a cliff. What? Well, they were taking a picture of themselves, 300-foot cliff, and they're standing on it trying to lean over. And you're shocked that they fell? You know, somebody standing 20 foot from a cliff and taking a picture, and somebody shoved them and threw them off the cliff. That's terrible. I'm laying on a cliff and I'm leaning over taking a picture and I fall. That's dumb. What were you doing leaning over a cliff? What were you doing alone? What were you doing in the car in the dark at that drive-in? I don't know what goes on now. I'm kind of oblivious. But what were you doing there? Why is it you were dressed like that? Why is it that you were rubbing your body together and dancing and saying, well, it's exercise, it's fun? Well, yeah, it's fun if you're young. Why? And then you're surprised whenever a young lady says, I'm pregnant. Whenever a young man says, I've got a disease. And so does the one I was with. Whenever you see a person, what do we do with this baby in the womb? And now they're being tempted by the world's answer of killing a child. But it began because I didn't have the common sense to stop, to have the proper commitment, to have the proper concern. Don't let it begin. Don't engage. Don't give yourself the things that are there. You need to realize God has given us a definition of true love. In the book of Romans, the 13th chapter, in verse 8, he says, "Owe no man anything but to love one another, for he that loveth another is fulfilled the law. For this, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not bear false witness, thou shalt not covet. If there be any other commandment, is briefly comprehended in this saying, namely, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, because love worketh no ill to his neighbor." Replace the lust out there with true love, and you can remain pure. You let lust override true love and name it love. Oh, we love each other. You love me, you'll do this, whatever. I've made this offer through the years. You find yourself in that situation, call me. You find yourself, you're over in Kansas City, you're somewhere far off, call me. If you're a young man, I'll come get you. If you're a young woman, me and my wife will come get you. But don't stay in that situation. Be like Joseph. Flee. You don't have to go to jail. You might have to call somebody and say, I was foolish. I was with this person I shouldn't have been. I was at this place I shouldn't have been. Call. But don't fall into sin. And don't call it love and stay there, because that's not what it is. Control it and do the things that are right. And when you do that, you have the courage that is needed to not go with the crowd. Romans the 12th chapter. Be not conformed to this world, be ye transformed. I'm going to seek purity. I'm not, Proverbs the 7th chapter, verse 10, I'm not going to dress in the attire of a harlot, male or female. I'm going to look and see, is it the hidden person of the heart that shows, or is it disguised by what I have? Whether it's overdressing or underdressing, whatever. I want, like we sing, the beauty of Jesus to be seen in me. So my clothing, my words, my action, all of that is going to be set forth, but I'm going to have the courage, and I'm going to have the courage, like Joseph, to say, no. And if that person, it's in the news all the time, well, they wouldn't take no. I'm going to tell you, talk to me. If you're a young woman, I can tell you how to say no and mean it. Scream, holler, kick. Say no, get out of that situation, run, call the cops, call me, call somebody else. That takes courage. And then courage, if you have sin, go to God for forgiveness. Ask your brethren for forgiveness. We can bear one another's burdens, and sometimes it's the consequences of that sin. It isn't prison. It is the courage to bear one another's burdens. But we can get through it together. But it's better to try and avoid it altogether. Control so-called love and have true love. Let God be in charge of your decisions, because you hide His word in your heart. I pray that's a decision that each of us make, that we are in control, that we know what true love is, and that's what we demand. We will not settle for anything less from ourselves or from those around us. If we can help you to show that love towards others, maybe you need prayers for strength. Maybe you need somebody to help you bear a burden. You come forward, we're not going to say, oh, what they've done. No, we're going to say that you're like all of us. Sometimes we just need help, need strength. Maybe you haven't shown proper love to God by being obedient to His will and becoming a child of God. Acts the 2nd chapter, those that gladly received the word and were baptized, you know why they did it and the others didn't? Because they loved God. Those who went away, they didn't love God. They, I love, no, if you love me, you keep my commandments. Well, maybe we can help you today, or maybe we can help you return. Whatever your need is, let's help one another as we stand and sing the song of invitation.